Eldrick Hale had lived on the same land for nearly half a century, in a rural region beyond the mountains. To him, this land was not merely property. It was an extension of his past and of his own body. He rose before sunrise, woke to the sounds of animals, and in the evenings rested his weary knees by the stove. But in recent years, doing the same things required twice the effort. His hands trembled, his breath grew short easily, and at night he woke with pain seeping deep into his bones. His son, Rowan Hale, was in the city. Unlike Eldrick, Rowan's life was made of concrete, traffic, and uncertainty. The city he had entered with hope after university had slowly worn him down. The jobs he applied for either never applied or rejected him with the excuse of lack of experience. His days began to blur together, indistinguishable among coffee cups and job listings. One evening, Eldrick called his son. His voice sounded more exhausted than ever. "I can't keep this up anymore," he said bluntly. "The animals, the debts, they're all piling up." Rowan remained silent. Eldrick continued. He said he would sell the land he owned, but that this was not surrender. He had found another place cheaper, yet Fertiland planned to buy it. An old but spacious piece of land in a forested area. Suitable animals would be brought there. There were sheep, sourced from regions near the German border in Europe, hardy breeds that reproduced quickly and formed flocks in a short time. "I'll pay off the debts," Eldrick said, "but I can't manage it alone. I need you to come." For Rowan, the offer hovered between salvation and a trap. He was on the brink of marriage. He and Malin were preparing for their wedding, but he had no money, no future, no solid plans. His father's call was an unwanted responsibility, yet one too necessary to refuse. He accepted. Eldrick sold the old land. The new place was an unnamed point on the map, surrounded by dense forest. The nearest settlement was miles away. When they went to see the property, Rowan felt something strange for the first time. The forest was silent. No birds, no wind. It was as if nature itself was holding its breath. But there was an odd sense of relief on Eldrick's face. He had work again, and he said, "This place is good. The soil is strong." First came the wedding. Then they began setting up the farm. But problems started from the very first day. Delivered materials were incomplete. Construction permits were delayed repeatedly. Workers abandoned the job halfway through. Every evening, Rowan collapsed from exhaustion, and every morning he woke more hopeless than the last. It was as if the farm was not wanted on this land. Around this time, Malin discovered she was pregnant. Rowan was happy, but deep down he was afraid. The farm was still unfinished. The barn was half built. The house smelled of dampness. At night, the sounds from the forest grew louder. Though they never knew exactly what those sounds were, Rowan insisted they were animal noises. Malin, however, lived in daily fear, convinced they belonged to something else, something different. When the child was born, the farm was still incomplete. Rowan spent his days on construction and his nights with the baby, trying to stay upright through sheer exhaustion. Eventually, the animals arrived, sheep with dark crimson wool, silent with unsettlingly empty gazes. yet they were productive. They multiplied quickly. In the first months, everything seemed to return to normal. The debts began to shrink. Rowan felt, for the first time, that he could breathe, but the forest had not changed. At night, the dogs would suddenly fall silent or bark at nothing. Maylin had stopped looking out the windows altogether. "This place has very strange sounds," she said. "They terrify me." One day, while Rowan was outside with the animals, his phone rang. Melon's voice was trembling. "There's something in the forest," she said. "It sounds like someone screaming and coming toward our house." Rowan rushed back home. There was nothing there. The forest was silent again. To calm Maylin, he went down into the yard and walked the perimeter. There were no tracks, no signs. Just as he was about to go back upstairs and say, "There's nothing," a scream rose from the forest. It sounded very close to a human voice, but it wasn't human either. He couldn't make sense of it. Even after the scream faded and its echo was lost, the forest did not return to its former state. The silence came back, but this time it felt as if the air itself were under pressure, heavy, oppressive, pressing down on the ears. It was the kind of silence that clogged your hearing. Rowan stood frozen for several seconds. His heart felt as though it might tear through his chest. Then, on pure instinct, he ran back to the house and grabbed the hunting rifle from the wall. The two dogs sprang to their feet as if they had been waiting for this moment. Maylin stood in the doorway, clutching the baby tightly to her chest. Her eyes followed Rowan as he ran toward the forest. "That wasn't an animal," she whispered. Rowan unleashed the dogs and moved into the forest. As they stepped between the trees, the air grew colder. The dogs ran ahead, then suddenly stopped. Their fur bristled. A deep, guttural growl rose from their throats. Rowan took a few more steps in a clearing under the moonlight. 3 silhouettes stood. In the misty air, he could make them out tall, black, and far too thin. At first glance, they resembled wolves, but their posture was wrong. Their shoulders were too high, their necks were unnaturally long, and they were not howling. They were watching. Rowan forced himself to suppress the fear flooding his body. "Wolves," he told himself. "Just wolves." He pulled the trigger. The bullet struck a tree trunk. After the second shot, the silhouettes withdrew. But they did not run. They retreated backward, crawling as they melted into the forest. The dogs barked for a long time. When Rowan returned, Maylin was still standing at the door. "They're gone," Rowan said. "Just wolves." But he did not believe it himself. After that night, nothing was ever the same. The sheep began to die for no apparent reason. First one, then two. Their wounds were irregular. There were no bite marks. It was as if something had torn the flesh from their bodies. At night, the dogs would not go near the barn. They stood at the door, trembling. Maylin began waking up at night. While nursing the baby, she would stare at the same spot over and over. "The inside of the barn," she said. "It feels like someone is there." Rowan tried not to listen, but what happened one afternoon, while Maylin was hanging laundry outside, was too clear to deny that she had just taken a sheet from the line. when she noticed movement near the barn out of the corner of her eye. At first she thought it was a shadow. Then she realized the shadow was crawling. There were 3 of them. They were nearly 2 meters tall. Their knees seemed to bend backward. Their skin was a dull darkness that absorbed the light. They had no faces, yet she could feel them looking at her. Malin screamed. Without dropping her phone, she called Rowan. When Rowan arrived running, the figures were emerging from the barn. When they noticed him, they did not speed up. They did not flee. They simply withdrew. Rowan entered the barn, for sheep lay on the ground. Their throats had been torn open, but there was no blood on the floor. In that moment, Rowan understood. This was not hunting. These creatures were killing for the sake of killing, as if they took pleasure in it. That night, he put Malin and the baby into the car and sent them to her mother's house. He stayed behind at the farm. He called his father and told him everything. Eldrick was silent for a long time. Then he said slowly, "So this land isn't empty after all, Rowan. Wait to hear from me tomorrow. I'm coming." The next day, Eldrick arrived with another man. He wore old clothes. When he spoke, he looked at the ground, not at people. He went into the house, walked through the barn, looked toward the forest. Then he sat at the table, took out papers, drew strange symbols, wrote in whispers. He placed the papers in the corners of the house and on the doors of the barn. "These are boundaries," he said, "but only for those who were not invited." For 2 hours, nothing happened. Then the wind began. The barn shook. The house trembled. The ground rippled as if something were moving beneath it. Sounds came from the walls. The man stepped back. His face had gone pale. "You don't belong here," he said, "and we can't stay anymore." Rowan asked what he meant. "This place belongs to them," the man said. "The one who sold it knew that. That's why it was so cheap. This land was claimed long ago." That night, Rowan did not sleep. Before dawn, he loaded the animals onto a truck. He didn't even gather their belongings. He looked back at the farm one last time. At the edge of the forest, among the trees, dark silhouettes stood. This time, they were not hiding. They were watching. Rowan pressed the gas pedal and never returned. Years later, when he told this story to someone, he said only this: "Some lands are not meant to be bought. Some places pretend to call to you, but once you enter, you are no longer meant to leave." And he never lived near a forest again. Thank you for listening to this story until the very end. If this video affected you, don't forget to support the channel by liking it. For more dark and realistic stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the next story.